Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Shit Loretta Knows. I've just opened Facebook on my phone and just seen myself giving the Navigating Your Day clip this morning while riding the stationary bicycle. Holy shit, bad hair, like just bad everything. Anyway, I am going to leave it up there since a lot of people have already seen it, so there's no point in me taking it down. Anyway, today we're talking about the healing power of conflict. So before we get into it, let's just define what conflict is. So most of us think conflict is fighting. Most of us think conflict is, I come to you with a position, you have a different position, we end up having an argument, whoever's the most persuasive or the toughest or the biggest bully basically wins. And that's what we think conflict is. Conflict is like war. But the truth is that all conflict is essentially or arises when we can't get what we want. So think about it. Wars are fought because one bunch of people want one thing and another bunch of people want something else. And in fact, they might both want the same thing, but they can't both have the same thing. So neither of them can have what they want until they defeat the other person. That's essentially what creates conflict. So when we can't get what we want, it makes us unhappy. And when we can't get what we want from another person, it potentially puts us in conflict with the other person. When we can't get what we want from ourselves, it puts us in conflict with ourselves. So conflict doesn't mean having to fight. Conflict means going where it's uncomfortable. Conflict is recognizing, where am I not getting what I want? And how do I want to change that? So if my coping strategy to get what I want when I'm not getting it is to be a bully, then that's what I'm going to want to do. My default setting or my coping mechanism is going to be a bully. If my coping strategy, unconscious coping strategy, by the way, is to be a martyr when I don't get what I want and try and passively aggressively manipulate people into giving me what I want, then that's what I'm going to do. And if the other person is irritated by my martyrdom and they call me out, then I'm going to have to defend myself. And it's at that point that we usually end up having a fight. So when we recognize that conflict is when we're not getting what we want, whenever we don't get what we want, it potentially triggers conflict within us. Now, most people are masters at avoiding conflict, me as well. Okay, when I think of conflict, I think of fighting and screaming and shouting and people saying mean things and someone getting hurt and generally it ending in tears with no resolution. And then tomorrow we just got to pretend it didn't happen and start again. Okay, so that's what I think about conflict. I also think about getting humiliated or embarrassed or like hauled over the coals or getting into trouble. All right, all of those things are what I associate with conflict. And of course, no one wants any of that. So that's why we become such masters at avoiding conflict. Now, here's the thing. If you avoid outer conflict, you're going to create inner conflict. So what do I mean by that? So let's say that you are with your spouse, your partner. You have an expectation that your partner is going to behave a certain way or treat you in a certain way. When your partner doesn't meet that expectation, because of course you haven't articulated it to them because you just expect them to intuit it. So when they don't meet your expectation, you have one of two options. You can either confront them and say, you messed up, you hurt me, or this hurt me, or whatever. But generally, if you don't want to do that, you will put up and shut up. But what that does is it creates outer peace, but it creates inner conflict. Because inside, you're going to be like, and then you're going to speak to your best friend, who's going to concur that your partner's a dick and that you are right and that they are wrong. And then you're going to maybe speak to someone else, and maybe you're going to speak to your sister, and maybe you're going to speak to your mother until you feel fully justified and actually enraged about the fact that this person didn't meet your expectations or didn't meet your needs. But you've created a whole turmoil of inner conflict because you've created a whole lot of negative emotion. So you've got the negative emotion of not having your needs met. And then you exacerbate that negative emotion by having a whole lot of people that support you justify that it's okay for you to feel shit. But what you don't do is you don't have a conversation with the person that you have the problem with. You also don't recognize that the reason why you have the problem, or at least part of the reason, is because you did not articulate what you expected. You expected them to intuit. And it's at this point that your ego is going to jump in and say, yes, but we've been married for 25 years and this has happened 1,000 times and surely this person's got it by now. But here's the thing, just as you have your set of blinkers, the other person has their set of blinkers. And to expect them to intuit what you need and what you want without actually articulating them is setting yourself up for the fight. Okay. So what ends up happening is outer conflict. Why do we avoid it? Well, because we don't want to get in trouble. We don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to lose. Many of us think that we avoid conflict because we're nice. Most of us avoid conflict because we actually don't want to lose. So we don't want to lose. We don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want things to get ugly. We don't want anyone else to think that we are not a nice or a good person. We don't want to get rejected. We don't want to get ostracized. Basically, it all boils down to we don't want the truth of what we truly believe about ourselves to be exposed. And so as a consequence of that, we don't go into the conflict. I don't go to my spouse and say, I expected you to do X, Y, and Z because, we've had this conversation 5 times already and it's happened so many times in the past. But when you don't do X, Y, and Z, even though we've spoken about it, then I feel disrespected by you and that's really pissed me off. We don't have that conversation. Because if we perceive the other person is tougher or stronger or more forthright than we are, then we'd rather not even go there. Okay. And I've often heard this from people in my practice, from spouses in particular, who say, yes, but it's impossible to argue with that person because they can argue themselves out of everything. And so the truth is you don't want to argue with them because you don't believe that you can win. You don't believe that they are going to turn around and say you are right. Because ultimately that's what we want. That's what actually generates the conflict. So when we have inner conflict, we have inner conflict because we have a complete lack of awareness of what our inner triggers are. Sometimes we have a lack of awareness of what our own needs and expectations are. We don't even know what we expect from the other person. Well, it's not true. We know what we expect from the other person, but we're not owning up to that. Okay, we're not consciously owning that. So we have inner conflict because we don't actually appreciate what our triggers are. We don't understand what the limiting beliefs are that are running us. We don't know what our unconscious coping strategies are. We just think that's part of who we are. We think that that's part of our personality. But the truth is, those things are not part of who you are. They are what you do. They're what you do and what you identify with. And if you have a lack of awareness of that, conflict is always going to be a problem for you. Now, even when you have an awareness of that and you realize, oh my goodness, this is my limiting belief of, not being worthy that's kicking in here, acting outside of your comfort zone, doing something that's different to what you've always done. So if what you've always done is come out fighting, then not coming out fighting is going to feel uncomfortable. If what you've always done is rolled over and play dead, then not rolling over and playing dead is going to feel uncomfortable. If you've always tried to be nice and sweet and kind and win them with honey, then when you've got to go in there with a bit of vinegar, you're not going to be comfortable. So the primary reason why we avoid a conflict is because we don't want to be uncomfortable. Now, here's the thing, my friends. When you have a situation, let's say you have physical signs and symptoms, and you're unhappy with how you feel, or you're unhappy with how your body looks, or you're unhappy with your degree of strength, or your flexibility, whatever, right? Something that's physical, or you don't like the way you don't like the emotions that you're currently experiencing, all right? You have conflict because you're not getting what you want. If you avoid the truth of that, then you're always going to keep on creating what you currently have. In order for you to create something different, you've got to do something different. And by that, I don't just mean the strategy that you apply. Well, it is the strategy that you employ, but you've got to do something different. And by its very nature, something different is going to be uncomfortable. Because when you try something for the first time, you've got all this pressure of, am I going to be good at it? Am I going to fail at it? Am I going to look stupid? Other people are much better at it than I am. All of that shit's going to be happening in your head. But once you've done it a few times, once you've done it the first time and you realize, it wasn't as bad as what I thought, then you do it again and you practice, you get better and better at it. So in the beginning, when you start working with this concept of conflict, don't think that just because you've identified what your limitation is, and because you know what your strategy is, it's going to be easy for you to do something else. That's not going to be easy because that is going to be outside of your comfort zone. And a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, it might even been the last time I did a live, The topic was about becoming comfortable with discomfort. I forget what the title was, but it was about how the reason why we don't create what we love is because we're so averse to being uncomfortable. We are addicted to pleasure and comfort. We are repulsed by pain and discomfort. But discomfort, being outside of your comfort zone, is the crucible in which transformation occurs. So until we become comfortable with the discomfort, until we become aware of how we're always trying to switch the discomfort off, instead of leaning into it so that something new can emerge out of it, we are going to get stuck in the same place that we are. So last week, some of you may know, I had backache. Long story. But what happens? So physically, so this is what my rational mind will tell you. If you say, Loretta, why? How did you hurt your back? So, well, I found a neighbor of mine lying in the road. He had fallen. He'd slipped and fallen. He had dementia. Was very confused. Hadn't hurt himself. Difficult to get him up. I was the only person there, and basically, I picked him up. I basically lifted him up and put him on his feet, and then I had to hoist him into my car. So my car is very hard to step into. We were parked on an incline. And then I drove him home and I had to help him out of my car. And then I went to a pole class. And the pole class was intense and heavy. I loved it. Nothing hurt. I was perfect. And the next morning when I got out of the shower, I bent down and I lifted my leg and I bent down towards my foot, standing on one leg to dry my foot and my leg. And when I came upright, I was like, oh, my lower back feels quite stiff. And then it just got stiffer and stiffer and stiffer until it was very difficult for me to move. I couldn't straighten my torso. And the only position that was comfortable for me was lying down. Now, the reason why that happened, with a little bit of introspection, was for a number of, there were quite a few reasons. The first one was that I'm addicted to being strong and I'm the rescuer. And so instead of going back to his house, which was down the road, and leaving him lying there, and getting some young men who live there to help me lift him, I decided I was going to do it myself. Now, justifiably, I was like, I can't leave him lying in the road. But let me tell you, it wasn't raining. It wasn't cold. It wasn't dangerous. He was on the side of the road. No one would have driven over him. And in the time that I lifted him up and got him in my car, one car came past. Incidentally, they didn't even stop. They didn't stop or wind down a window to say, hey, what's going on here? Here's me lifting this guy in his pajamas. He was in his pajamas, right? Off the road, and they didn't bother stopping. Anyway, that's another story. It's a story for another day. I have to still process that. So logically, that's how I hurt my back. The truth is, one of my limiting beliefs is I need to control myself, others in the world. If I'm not in charge and I'm not in control, everything's going to go to shit. That's what I believe. It's a limiting belief. It's conscious. I know that I have that. Those of you who also know that I started this community clinic, the clinic runs for a week out of every month. And I started it not because I want to work in a community clinic. I started it because I want to make homeopathy visible in Africa. I also want to provide employment for young homeopaths. I also want to help the community, and I want them to improve their health, and I want to grow communities. But in none of those goals are working as a homeopath in a community clinic. It's not really one of my goals. And because I need to control myself, others in the world, and this is my project, this is my baby, okay, can you hear my ego? I unconsciously didn't realize it, but my focus was on, I need to control this. But what happened was, after the first month at Kula, I was like, you know what, I'm trapped now. I'm trapped. Like 1 week out of every month, I have to A, be in East London, and B, I have to be at Kula 5 days of the week. So that means my coaching business, my social media, all of that goes to shit, because that's what happened in September. And I'm like, okay, well, this is my life now. I have to shove my coaching clients out, or I have to do them at the end of the shift at Kula, and it's quite hard work, and blah, 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 blah. So here's what happened. I hurt my back, and I could have pushed through and gone in on Monday, but honestly, my back was still ready. So the whole weekend, I was like, oh, I'll just rest on the weekend. Didn't really help. It was fine when I was lying down, not great when I was upright or sitting. So I just decided, well, screw this. I'm going to not go on Monday. And I arranged that the 2 doctors who work there, they were computers, they had the cash box, they had everything they needed, they had the key, they could get in, and I just left them to it. Because quite frankly, I couldn't have been there even if I wanted to, not without taking a lot of painkillers, and I wasn't going to do that. So what happened? They had 31 patients. They saw all the patients. They managed to do what needed to be done. They were all happy. The staff all worked really hard. They said they missed me, but quite frankly, I wasn't there to boss them around. And actually, they got the job done. So when I went there on Tuesday, I realized there were a few things But I could have just thought of that and said, hey, I hadn't thought of this. Please, you guys must better sort this out. So I sorted that stuff out, spent Tuesday morning there. And then on Wednesday, I had a board meeting on Zoom. And so I was going to actually do it from Kula originally so that I could be there and keep an eye on things. And then I realized they don't need me to keep an eye on them. So I'm just going to do this from home. And on that day, they saw 36 patients without me. The roof didn't cave in, the world didn't stop turning, and the clinic operated and the patients were served. And that made me realize, oh, this is why I have backache, because the backache gave me an excuse to lie down, to not go, and allowed me to relinquish the control. Now, I could have done that had I just been conscious. When I first had the idea that, oh, I feel like I'm trapped in this project now, this project that taken me 4 years to do, and I'm there for 1 week, and I'm starting to think, oh, I'm starting to feel claustrophobic and trapped. If I had just maintained my awareness of that feeling and just explored that a little bit and realized, okay, Loretta, this is definitely your limiting belief coming up. What is your end result? Why did you start this? I started this one so that we could start more. What do you really want to do? Start more. Help other people start more. Do you want to work as a homeopath in the clinic? No. Do you have to? No. Who said you had to? Nobody, actually, probably only me. So this is the avoiding of the conflict. I avoided admitting that I wasn't getting what I wanted from this project that I put 4 years of my life into starting. And because I avoided the conflict, in order to get out of that, I inadvertently created the pain. Now, listen, the backache wasn't pleasant. It was frustrating. But the minute it happened, I was like, okay, I'm in it now. I know how this plays out. I'm in it now. First, it was like, oh, tomorrow I'll feel better. It wasn't better the next day. And then I did all the right things. It was only when I started thinking about why I actually had it that I started feeling grateful for it and started being able to see the blessing in it. My point is, in order to avoid outer conflict, admitting I don't want to work in Kula every single day. I would love to be there when I want to be there. I'd love to oversee it. I love to manage. I'm running all of it. I'm running all the admin. I run the money. I can do all of that. I don't physically want to be in there, and I don't want to feel like I have to be there all the time. So avoiding the conflict led to, in part, the symptom. There was some other shit going down, which also contributed to that, but this is enough for the illustration, right? So that you can understand that. So disease arises because we usually have an inner conflict between what we've got and what we think is all we can have and what we love. And part of the problem is we don't necessarily even know what we love. In fact, the truth is we do know what we love. We just don't want to admit it because we don't think we can have it on a number of levels. And so that inner conflict, avoiding that conflict, leads to, very often, the development of signs and symptoms. And then the signs and symptoms very often get you inadvertently what you want. Now, I just want to go back to my back example. And this is not because I'm so great. This is just because this is what I do for a living, guys. I've done this shit for 30 years. This is what fascinates me. Why did this happen? And what is it about? How did I create this? So the first thing is to take 100% responsibility. Very few people want to do that. It's not my fault. It's just, how did I create this? Okay. And once I know how I created it, then I know why I created it. And once I understand why I created it, I can go and create what I love without having to have backache. So many of us we don't even recognize the inner conflict. I know how to do this, and I avoided the inner conflict for a month until it came and bit me on the ass. The truth is, though, once I started recognizing what it was about, and I must be quite honest, it took me 4 or 5 days to because I had to actually not go to Kula on Monday and go on Tuesday and see, hey, it's actually working well, and then not go again on Wednesday and realize on Thursday it's actually the truth is they don't really need me. They need me to just be in charge and make sure that the equipment is there and that there's medicine and that shit works. That's what they need me for. But to actually do the work, they don't actually need me. So it's being prepared to go into the inner conflict. So I'm going to give you another example, all right? Let's say that you have migraine headaches. I'm going to pick migraines because migraines, many people have them, and many people have had really bad headaches, maybe not as bad as migraines, but I skrik for headaches. I can take lots of other kind of pain, but I'm a real wimp when it comes to headache. So what happens when you have a classic migraine? When you have a classic migraine, generally you have to take some heavy drugs, and you basically have to shut yourself up in a dark room, and you have to sleep. So what happens is that you get complete timeout. When you have a migraine, you don't have to think about what you're making for dinner. You don't think about who you're feeding. You don't think about what's happening at the office, because you can't. You're in such agony that you cannot, and you have no option but to actually just be quiet in a dark room, shut it all out. You basically shut down completely. You shut yourself off totally from your external environment. Now imagine you have a limiting belief of not being good enough. And associated with that limiting belief is your coping strategy of always being super good at everything. So you are super reliable. You are the person that everyone can turn to. You're a high achiever in many, many areas of your life. And you are juggling at any one time at least 8 balls. You've got 8 balls in the air at any one time, because you're constantly trying to prove to yourself that you are good enough, and to the world that you are good enough. You don't believe you ever can be, but you hope that you can fool everyone, because if they don't know that you're not good enough, they'll still love you. So when you are super mom, super wife, super worker, super NPO runner, super whatever, okay, and you're exhausted because you've now started identifying with how strong you actually are, especially because every second person tells you this, what ends up happening is you can't take a break. And eventually, now you've got conflict. Oh my God, I'm so exhausted, I need to rest. And no, I'm so addicted to this persona that I've created of being like always on it and being super strong and and I've got this limiting belief that's riding me unconsciously. I cannot take a break. What happens is you create the migraine, because the migraine helps you to get what you need, which is to rest, to shut down. Now, the problem is it gets you a mofo headache and very often nausea and vomiting. Nobody consciously creates that. It's like the backache. I didn't go, oh my God, I just wish that my back was sore, because then I don't have to go to Kula for 2 days. I actually find it difficult to move for a week. I cannot go to my pole class. I can't go walk on the beach. I can't exercise the way I like to. It's difficult for me to sit to see my clients. I mean, hello, I don't want that. But the reason why we get the symptoms is because we have the inner conflict, and we are not prepared to go into that conflict and admit, oh my God, I cannot be Superwoman anymore. Or admit, I'm so scared they'll stop loving me if I'm not Superwoman. Or tell your loved ones, I know that you're going to say this is ridiculous, but I'm terrified that if I'm not Superwoman, you will not love me. Because we don't want to go into the conflict. Because we don't want to go where it's uncomfortable. So when I say conflict is the key to healing, being prepared to go within and go, you know what? Signs and symptoms happen at the interface between what I would love and what I've got. And that conflict between the two very often creates my symptoms. So how did I create this? And once you find how you created it, now you know how this happened, all right? So once again, like, oh my God, I got kiboshed by my control issues, right? So you can never get rid of these limiting beliefs, guys. You can just start becoming more and more aware of how they show up in your life. And so very often when things go really well, when you reach success, this is the other reason why this happened. When you reach a goal, when you do the success, I've had lots of people saying, oh my God, you're so amazing. How do you do so many things? This is so fantastic. Congratulations. Because of course I've got it all over social media because I'm trying to get more funding. Okay. And so I've realized this dream that I've had for 4 years, or the first part of it in any case, like phase 1, it's there now. It's done. It's real. So now what happens is we have developed something called an upper limit problem. Now I've reached the upper limit of what I can tolerate in terms of like getting it done. So what I have to do is I have to sabotage myself to make my life a little bit more difficult. So when I realize all of that shit, I'm like, okay, so I've got an upper limit problem. I have tools to deal with that. I have definitely, my limiting belief is running my show. And so this is a little light bulb for me to say, you know what, the next time you have an inkling, oh my God, I think I'm starting to feel trapped. Because what happened in September was I had the inkling, I ignored it and was like, no, let me just get it going like 2 or 3 months, and then I will spend some time doing the self-examination. Well, hello, it came much faster than what I thought it was going to. So avoiding the conflict within, the conflict between what you have, the conflict between what your spirit is longing to express in the world and what your ego is saying you have to settle for, that inner conflict is what erodes the strength of our physical, mental, and emotional health. And if we're not prepared to go into that, then healing cannot happen. But when you are prepared to go into that, when you are prepared to realize, okay, because part of this thing with me in the back, it was the ego, hey? My project, Loretta started the project. Without Loretta, the project can't go. What bullshit is that? That's just my ego. It's like, that's okay. You know what? That's the part of me that really just wanted some recognition. Then I got check how this works. Then I got all the recognition. And then when I got the recognition, it was like, oh my God, like what if this doesn't work? So, and then all my control issues kicked in. So the point I'm trying to make here, my friends, is that we can no longer put Band-Aids on disease. You cannot put a Band-Aid on your signs and symptoms. And just like in the personal development world, there's like a spiritual bypass. You know, we're all doing love and light, and none of us are looking at hate and darkness. We're all just doing like the things that make us feel good, but we're not doing that sort of shadow work. We're not really exploring what's going on inside of ourselves. I think that a lot of us do physical bypass also. So we eat the right food, we run the right races, we do the right exercise, we get enough sleep, we take the right supplements, we go to our Reiki healer once a week, whatever the hell it is we do. I'm not knocking any of that. I do all of that, okay, except I don't go for Reiki every week. But you know what? I do all of that. I take the right supplements, I do the exercise, I eat the right food, blah, 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 blah. That is a form, and then we think, okay, I'm really focused on my health. That is a form of bypass. That's a health bypass. We're bypassing what's really sitting at the foundation of why it is that we are not happy or not well. And honestly, I think it's time for us to rip the Band-Aid off. And of course, I'm going to say that because that's what I do for a living. So if you are ready to rip the Band-Aid off, if you think that you've got a Band-Aid on and you're ready to rip the Band-Aid off, if you're sitting with a chronic disease label that you can't shift, if you've got signs and symptoms that are driving you nuts, if you've tried all the healthy shit and you're still struggling, it's time to rip the Band-Aid off. Or if you can't get the healthy stuff right, because not being able to feed yourself well, not being able to move your body, not being able to do the basics of self-care, feeding yourself nourishing food, moving your body the way it wants to move, sleeping so that you can restore yourself. If you're not doing that, it's because you're being run by a limiting belief that is forcing you into compulsive behavior. And the most common limiting belief is I'm unworthy. And I'm unworthy, its compensatory strategy is to make everyone else more important than me because it looks super noble. It looks so good on like your friend resume. You know, she's the most amazing person who will give you the shirt off her back. People with I'm unworthy, you're not even worthy of looking after yourself. So I say as if I don't have that. We've all got that one to a certain extent, okay? But it's like, you're not worth it. Everyone else matters more than you. And at some point, your body and your mind and your feelings just go, screw this, I'm not doing this anymore. And that's when you become anxious, you become overwhelmed, you start feeling depressed, and you start potentially having physical signs and symptoms. So if you're ready to rip the Band-Aid off, if you are ready to do that inner work, and listen, the inner work is not all navel gazing and like soul destroying and crying for 7 months. It literally is about just identifying, oh my God, this is what it is. So again, my story with a backache. I could now sip from the fountain of guilt, flay myself with a cat of 9 guilt tails because, oh my God, Loretta, you're the coach and your control got your limiting belief ran your life. Or I could just go, you know what? This is life, my friends. Your limiting belief is always going to trip you up. The more successful you become, the louder your limiting belief starts screaming. When you achieve something that you really want, then your limiting belief is going to come up super strong. It's like, oh my God, check how amazing this works. So now when I know this, I can actually be more prepared for it and actually go within before I develop the symptom. And here's the other thing. When I miss it, like I did this time, no train smash. I'm just going to do some of the work. I know what to do. I know what the tools are to apply. And you know what? I'm going to go to the right therapy. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to let someone give me a rub or a massage or physio or whatever it is. It just means I recognize how I got here, and I recognize intuitively, I know what it is that I need to heal myself optimally. And sometimes what I need to heal myself optimally is to get someone else to help me. Uta says, I'm unworthy is a truly shit trait to have. So you know what, Uta, we all feel the same about whichever our limiting belief is, okay? It's not really, because you know what? I'm unworthy. You guys get all the badges for being nice. Everybody loves you because you're so nice. Those of us who don't have I'm unworthy, well, you know, we get the bitch badge more. So there isn't a good limiting belief. There isn't a better limiting belief. There isn't a worse limiting belief. They all fucking hurt. And they all hurt to the same degree, no matter which one we have. And they run us until we become aware enough to get them to not do that quite so much anymore. So I hope that made sense to you guys. I would love to hear your comments. So please leave a comment for me. If you are ready to rip the Band-Aid off, if you are ready to truly step into your power and become your own healer, because you are quite capable of doing what I have just done, then I would love to be the person to help you. So you can type ready in the comments and I'll reach out to you, or you can send me a direct message and we can set up a call, chat to see if I can help you and get you onto the road to not only healing, but into stepping into your true power and becoming an ace at leaning into conflict rather than avoiding it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back next week with more shit Loretta knows. And if you are on your live, please type live. Thank you. If you are watching the replay, please type replay. I will download this and I'm going to upload this video to YouTube. So if you want to share it with your friends, I will put the link in the comments as soon as it's ready. And then you can actually just share the YouTube link with them. I would be very grateful. If you've got friends that you think would benefit from this kind of stuff, please invite them into Vitality Matters. I'd be really, really grateful. Geraldine says it's freaking hard. Yes, it's only freaking hard because we make it so hard, my friend. It can actually be fairly easy. It just takes a bit of practice, and I know that you are practicing it diligently. Mwah! Lots of love to all of you, and I'll be back next week for more Shit Loretta Knows.